Ladies and gentlemen, 79th Halas listeners, man, we are back here on the preview podcast, man. We've got a very special guest today, man. We've had it's been an interesting day on Bears Twitter, which is like every interesting day on Bears Twitter, man. But before I get to the introduction of this man we have here, man, I'm glad to have him. We got the one and only Domonique Foxworth here. ESPN, you got your own podcast, the Domonique Foxworth Show. Been on Bomani Jones podcast, the right time. By the way, I just want to say I'm a fan. As a guy, black man in this media space. You guys, Bo. I had the opportunity to have Clint Yates on my show earlier this year.
Oh, yeah.
Have you guys on here. It's really, really great. I love you and Bo. I love how y'all go back and forth, man. So it's an honor to have you on the show. But you had Bears Twitter in a tizzy today, man. Had a comment day about Justin Fields and the situation, and of course, Bears fans are very sensitive, very, very sensitive bunch. Just tell them,
all fans are kind of sensitive,
Yeah.
and I mean, I guess all people are kind of sensitive because I gotta be honest, I got a little sensitive. Like I don't care about Twitter heat, but the few times, and it's happens far too often that fans blow up on you.
Yeah.
Most of the time it doesn't annoy me because like they understand the point, but it feels like they missed the point here. And it was very clear that they were being critical of me for not doing my research when at the same time they were responding to a clip from my show that didn't fully explain what I was saying. So anyway, long story short, I said that that Justin Fields should demand a trade. And so the show, my very first episode, is already creating a stir.
Start.
I mean, I'm not trying to be hot take guy like that says the wild thing and gets everybody excited. So, however, someone, I don't even know who did it, someone clipped or quoted me as saying he should demand a trade and also that their cap was a mess. And so then I got into a big fight about whether the cap was a mess or not. And none of that really matters to me because if you listen to the show, the theme of the first episode was kind of unintentional, but it became about institutional stability.
Right.
It was about quarterbacks are not made as much as they are ruined, in my view. And like you look at the
100%.
great quarterbacks in the league right now, you notice they all came into stable organizations and good situations. Like just about all of them. I think Joe Burrow is like the only one that I can say did not. The rest of them came into teams that had a lot of talent and also had like some history, had a lot of talent or had some an organization with some history of stability and good decision making. And so my point about Justin Fields was that he worked really hard for a long time to get in this spot, and he is finally here. And it just felt terribly unfair to me. And it wasn't about Justin Fields as much as it's emblematic of all players. It feels terribly unfair to have that opportunity squandered because the organization was not prepared to have you. And then it turned into me coming down on Ryan Pohl and Eberflus. Like I actually am a big Eberflus fan. He did some creative things in Indiana, or Indianapolis that I hadn't seen out of other defenses. So you guys should be happy to have him. And Ryan Poles, I'm rooting for him for obvious reasons because it's not very many black men in front offices. So, I want him to succeed. So it's not about them. And yes, they have taken the steps to clean up the cap, but that doesn't change the fact that this organization has not been stable for a while. Like you mismanaged the previous quarterback. You trade away draft picks. You get a new quarterback. You don't have first round picks in multiple drafts. You get a new quarterback, and we all know that. Not the only way, but the easiest way to win a Super Bowl in the NFL is have a good quarterback on a rookie deal.
Yep.
So, I don't have a problem with the team maxing out their salary cap if they got a good quarterback on a rookie deal.
Right.
Maxing out your salary cap when and filling and surrounding them with talent. But they maxed out their salary cap and they are not surrounding him with talent. So that's bad for them. That's bad for the fans. That's bad for Justin Fields. And so I guess that was more the point I was trying to make. And it was off the cuff and it was inarticulate. I do understand why saying their cap is a mess doesn't make a whole lot of sense when they're coming up on being the team with the most cap space. But their cap is a mess, so their roster's a mess because their cap was a mess.
100%. Yeah.
And so that was not the Justin Fields tangent was not a planned topic of mine. So I will give Bears trolley Twitter the benefit of saying, yes, I was inarticulate at that point. But I believe that they would agree with me if any of them actually listened to the podcast, and it's probably in the best interest of the Bears also.
Yeah.
Like, you are going to get to the point. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on your podcast.
No, go ahead. Go crazy.
You're going to get to the point next year where you're starting to put some good players, hopefully, around Justin Fields. Next year, the end of next year is also the time when you have to decide on the 5th-year option. You will have one real year to evaluate Justin Fields, and 1 year after the scar tissue that he's developed from playing 2 years in a bad situation. So you're going to have to make a decision at the end of next year about Justin Fields as far as the 5th-year option is concerned. I suspect they'll pick it up. And then you're assuming that they're going to build a good enough roster around him in one offseason that you're going to get a good look at him. And then you're going to be in a situation that a lot of bad organizations are in, including the one you just got out of.
Right.
You got a quarterback that you're not sure about,
Yeah.
a roster that's set up poorly, and a salary cap that is not in a great situation. So I guess that was my point, and I was inarticulate in that. I hope that, and that's the reason why I wanted to come on your show and other shows in the region, and hopefully win back the reasonable Bears fan, but the crazy ones.
Reasonable Bears fan. That's very not a lot of them. And this was like with me. So when I read this one, this is actually like, which is funny about Twitter. And shout out to all our fans, by the way, for tweeting you to talk to us, man. So shout out to everybody who tweeted us, man. We got a nice fan base out there. But I was doing my workout this morning, and I saw like from the tweet with the quote, and then when I saw the quote, my first thing was, let me actually watch the video, because that's something that I like to do. I'm like one of the few people who actually read articles before I go into the headline. But the thing that stood out to me, I was like, only thing that I disagree with on it was like, hey, we got hella cap next year. Like everything else, I couldn't I wouldn't say that he should demand a trade. Now, I say like the difference I have. Now, let me give you like a little background. I am one of the most insane Bears fans that you ever meet in your life. Like I have Bears flip-flops on right now. But I've had the privilege of being actually able to cover the team these last 2 seasons. So it's like once I saw like what's behind the curtain, and you see how hard these guys look, and you're around the players, and I talked to Justin yesterday, talked to David Montgomery yesterday, and it's like, I'm still a fan, but I'm like more ratchet.
It changes you a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what people were telling me, that it's going to change. I was like, no, it's never going to change. It kind of changed for me, So I see both sides of the spectrum. So when I'm looking at, you're right. I feel like this team, they don't have a lot of talent, but I think from the Bears fan, this is why I feel like Bears fans were upset at your tweet. And I don't think it's specifically your tweet. I think it's like a bunch of the national media piling up at the same time. It's like every day, the Bears going to be worse than the Lions. The Bears going to win 2 wins. The Bears going to win 3 wins. And I said this on my show that I just did a couple minutes ago, and I said, as bad as the Bears have been, I've seen a lot, and I mean a lot of bad football in almost 34 years on this earth. But they've only won 3 or less games one time ever. Yeah. So I feel like in order for that level, it's probably Justin Fields gets hurt. So I understand all of those, but I feel like the fans are just they're angry right now, because it's like, only we can pile on our team. And even the preseason game a couple weeks ago, they blew out the Seahawks. If you were listening to the broadcast, you would think it was the Bears who had 11 points and not the Seahawks.
I feel you on that. Don't nobody want to hear some outsider come and bang on their team. Yeah. That's not fair. I feel like we could have a discussion about the cap space, but honestly, I don't think it's all that relevant. I got drawn into that conversation on Twitter, but that doesn't make much sense. Your point about getting close to the players changes things. It makes them people to you. Yeah. And they're always people to me. And it's because I was one of those people. So like my point about Justin Fields, and again, if you listen to the podcast, it's the Domonique Foxworth show. If you want to find it, if you listen to it, you'll see that it was a bit saying that he should demand a trade was a bit hyperbolic in order to like drive home my point. But the bottom line of my point was it feels unfair, which I think everyone can relate to feel like your boss or your company is setting you up to fail. Yeah. And particularly in this case, when there's a lot riding on it. And I have to imagine that the hit rate on quarterbacks is not because it's so many bad quarterbacks who play well in college and are bad in the league. The hit rate is bad because there's so many other variables that can throw you off in an organization, and those things are not aligned yet. And that's the problem. And so I guess that's more than anything what led me to say what I was saying. But if you are not one who wants to give the players that type of autonomy, you can still look at it from your selfish side as a fan and understand that you got to get your timing right. And right now, your timing is wrong. You got a young quarterback on a team that's in a rebuild mode, and you're not going to be able to find out who he is, or you're going to ruin who he is because you were not ready to receive him. So I don't know. The only thing that really got under my skin today was just the idea that I'm out here making hot takes to get some people to follow and subscribe. If you listen to the show, like, you realize that you actually would have learned something. It's smart, it's thoughtful, and it comes from a unique perspective. So I'm happy to be on shows like this so I can go through it with people like you who are reasonable.
Well, I appreciate it. That's the first time I've ever been called reasonable as a Bears fan ever.
But I just met you putting on a good show for the first 10 minutes of our relationship.
No, well, with me, I'm like I said, I'm seeing both sides of it now. Like, and also with the Bears, we're also explaining people, who now I did move to Los Angeles. I get called Hollywood every damn time.
Oh, I see you.
I'm in Chicago now to do it, for a couple weeks. But one thing about Chicago sports, we eat, live, die shit the Chicago Bears. Like, it don't, like, the Cubs are, people love the Cubs. I'm a White Sox fan. The White Sox aren't living up to expectations. We don't know when the hell Lonzo Ball's coming playing basketball again. So it's like all they have is this. And it's like, and you bring up a good question. I always say this when we talk about national media perception. And one thing I've always noticed with the beat reporters, we see this every day. You guys talk about a lot of stuff. Even when I listen to you and Bo talk, there's a wide spectrum you got to get over. So I think it's unrealistic for a fan to expect them to know, or you guys know as much about the team as we do. So I feel like they're like, we turn the page on Matt Nagy. We turn the page on Ryan Pace. And it's like, the Bears still have a lot of things to prove. Yeah, the fans might have turned on, but that stink is still there. Like, I've seen a lot of bad offenses, and I've never seen anything as worse as what I saw from Matt Nagy the last 3 years. So you have to get over that. So, there is a chance that Fields could shut people up and do well with the mediocre stuff he has. But there's also a fair chance that he might not. This is the Bears. We hype up Jim McMahon. In all respect to Jim McMahon. He had the greatest running back ever and maybe the greatest defense ever, and they won that Super Bowl. We praise Jay Cutler. Like, this is the history of Bears quarterbacks. So it's like, I feel like we have this hope, and you just wanted to do well. But I feel like what I tell Bears fans is you gotta look at it from both sides, which is hard for Bears fans, and feel like once you're on Twitter, everybody piles up on you, and it's just like, oh, now I'm gonna really troll you. I'm gonna turn it up, which is what I like to do on Twitter. Like,
I was doing that a lot too, just digging at people having a good time because it's fun, and because you can't have this type of conversation on Twitter. But I mean, you said earlier on 3 wins as like the benchmark. Like that.
Well, I got them.
They might get more than 3 wins, but
I'm picking them for 7. I'm just saying, like what everybody else had. I got them for 7. I got them for 7.
I'd be impressed.
It's a very weak schedule. And obviously the Bears are gonna be looked at as a win on from other teams for sure. But if you look at these other teams, like Niners have a great defense. Don't get me wrong. I'm not really worried about. I'm not losing sleep over Trey Lance. I'm just not. And so I think this could be a game where the Bears could steal. Now, it could go left too. I feel like this team, if they have a major injury or two, my 7-game prediction goes out the window. But if they stay relatively healthy, I think there's opportunities there. There's going to be 2 or 3 games that maybe 1 or 2 games they lose, they got no business losing. There's going to be 1 or 2 they win, they have no business winning. And so it's really about, like you said, it's about Justin Fields. Even if they did win 5, I don't care about record. If I come out of the season like, okay, we got something here that we can build on. Now let's take this cap space and spend it on them. Then that's something that you can build on. Because like you said, with these quarterbacks, if you look in across the league, if you ain't got one of these young beasts out here, you don't have to shot. And even if you have one, you still might not win. You might pull a Leslie Frazier and lose like the Bills did last year. So it's a toss-up, man. So I just feel like Bears fans, they're irritable. But I'm glad that we was able to get I'm like, I know that there's more to it. And even your podcast, where you was like, I'm glad you brought this up. So it's like, it was something like, it was kind of like mid-conversation.
So that's the, it's a thought that I have generally, not about the Bears specifically. And you're right. And national people, we have to stay on top of a lot of things. So I'm not in the nitty gritty of everything like you will be for the Bears. However, nothing that I said was terribly wrong. I think the cap thing could be misunderstood. misunderstood.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the context of what I was saying, nothing that I said was wrong. Like, it made sense. But I think this is the problem is you want to come out, and you're right about this. The goal for the Bears and Bears fans this year is to come out of this year having made a decision or have a strong feeling about if Justin Fields is the guy or not. And then you can make a plan going forward. Definitely. My point is, look down at Miami. They don't know if Tua's the guy or not because they kind of mismanaged. He had no offensive line. He had the right opportunities. He had the right chance. They still trying to figure out if Tua is the guy. Yeah. Like, you can look around. There's lots of organizations that did this. Your own organization did it with Trubisky. We
did it.
Look, and so I'm standing here, and yes, I don't read Bears Twitter every day, but I don't got to for this, and that's all I want y'all to know is like, I may not be a Bears fan, but you ain't got to be mad at me for telling you the shit you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe it bothered you to say that Justin Fields should demand a trade. That's fine. You can be upset at that, but you can't disagree with all the reasons why I said he should demand a trade. Imagine if you was Justin Fields Bear fan. You got drafted to the NFL, and then you watch this organization set you up to not succeed. And then people talking about you like you a bust in 5 years. And you're like, but did you remember 10 years from now, we're not going to remember the situation that was around him. We're going to look at his numbers and say, he sure was a bad 100%. Quarterback. So that's 100%. All.
And just even like, and that's just like the NFL. So people doubting Mahomes this year. And this is Patrick Mahomes. So it's like, I get that. And also stuff that, the truth hits deep. Like, I was mad as hell when Aaron Rodgers said he owned the Bears. But is he lying? No. Like, I was mad for like 3 hours. And I sat and thought about it. Like, think of every bad sports moment we've had. 95% of them involve Aaron Rodgers and Randall Cobb. And like, I couldn't get mad at it, man. So
he was right. You just didn't want to hear.
I just didn't want to hear.
And I'm sorry to tell y'all the truth. Y'all can talk about this between yourselves. I didn't want to come in and tell you that your outfit was whack, but maybe one of your friends can tell you that your shoes don't match.
Oh man, but it was glad to have you on here. I mean, I know you got to get out of here, brother. Man. Tell everybody they can get in tune with your podcast and
Nah, please. Well, the very first episode, the Domonique Foxworth show, is the one that prompted all this conversation. So please listen to that. If you like it, subscribe and hang around, and or just reach out to me and tell me I'm dumb. If you want to, I'll be sure to block your monkey ass. All right.
Thanks, man. Thanks for joining us.
No problem.